I first arrived in Coldwater Valley in the fall of 2019. It was a tucked-away sliver of land in the mountains of western Montana, shadowed by the towering Beartooth Range. I had taken the job as a wildlife officer not because I loved nature, but because I was running from something I could never explain. Coldwater seemed like the kind of place where people did not ask too many questions. My first week was uneventful. I set up a small cabin that sat a few miles from the nearest town, a place called Halberd. The locals kept to themselves. Most of them were descendants of old logging families who had been around for generations. They had a way of speaking that made every sentence sound like a warning. One old man named Ray Whitaker stopped me outside the general store on my second day. He looked me over like he was measuring a coffin. He said something that stayed with me. You should never go beyond the scarred ridge after sunset, no matter what you hear, no matter what you see. I asked him what he meant by scarred ridge, and he only shook his head. I checked the map later. There was a spot just east of my cabin marked as Ridge Hollow. Locals had scratched it out in pen like they were trying to erase it from memory. It made me curious. Too curious. On the sixth night, I heard it for the first time. I had been out checking game cameras along the base of the forest line. Dusk came fast in Coldwater. One moment the trees were golden, and the next they were black. Silhouettes. I heard something then. A high-pitched screech that turned into a gurgling howl. It came from the direction of the ridge. I stood still for a long moment. The radio on my belt crackled with static, and then a voice came through. It was not one of my coworkers. The voice said only one word: run. I looked around, but saw nothing. No sign of life anywhere. I started back toward the cabin, and every step felt watched. That night, I locked every door and window. I kept my rifle on the kitchen table. The screeching came again, just after midnight. This time, it was closer, much closer, and it did not come from one voice. There were several, layered and disjointed, screaming without breath, laughing without joy. I did not sleep that night. In the morning, I found tracks outside, not human, not animal. Something in between. 3 toes, long heel, deep impressions like it was heavy, too heavy. The following day I called dispatch in Billings to report what I had found. They dismissed it. Probably a bear with a damaged paw. Maybe a prank by some bored locals. I knew better. I had seen bears. This was not a bear. Ray Whitaker was waiting for me at the gas station when I came into town. He had a stack of old newspaper clippings in his hand. He said nothing but handed them over and walked away. The clippings were from as far back as 1952. All of them mentioned disappearances near Ridge Hollow. Dozens of people over 70 years. Hikers, hunters, even a state biologist in 1994. None of them found. I drove out toward the ridge that afternoon. There was a service road that wound up into the dense pine cover. About a mile in, I found the first marker. A tall wooden post covered in feathers and bones. At first I thought it was some kind of tribal totem, but it looked newer. Recently placed. A warning. I parked the truck and continued on foot. The woods were unnaturally silent. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of my boots on frozen earth. About 20 minutes in, I found something that made me stop breathing. A camera. My own game camera. It had been pulled from the tree and smashed. Lying next to it was a strip of cloth, torn, stained. It looked like the sleeve of a uniform. I turned back fast. I made it 10 steps before I heard it. Breathing heavy, wet, close. I raised my rifle and turned in a full circle. Nothing, but the sound did not stop. It was like it was circling me. A voice whispered in my ear. Too close. It said, I see you. My legs moved before my brain caught up. I ran without looking back. Back in the cabin, I locked the door again. That night, the power went out. Not just mine, all of Halberd. Total blackout. The emergency radio crackled again. The same voice as before. This time it said one word. Closer. 2 nights later, I found a man stumbling through the trees outside my cabin. His name was Michael Adams. He was pale blue with cold and shaking so hard I thought he was having a seizure. I wrapped him in blankets and gave him coffee. It took hours for him to speak. When he did, he said he had been part of a group hunting trip near Ridge Hollow, 6 of them. Something came into their camp on the second night. Tall, thin, faces like melting wax, no eyes, just black sockets. He said the others screamed, but he ran. He did not stop running until he saw the glow of my porch light. His boots were gone. He had run barefoot through snow and forest and somehow survived, but he would not look out the windows. Every time the wind howled, he clutched the rifle I had given him and cried. In the morning, I called for help. 2 sheriff deputies and a Forest Service team arrived. I took them to the campsite. What we found was not a campsite. It was a slaughterhouse. Tents shredded, blood frozen in wide sprays across tree trunks. No bodies, just scraps, bones, teeth. 1 of the deputies vomited behind a tree. The others took photos and said nothing. They called in federal agents, told me to keep quiet, told Michael he would be taken to a facility in Missoula for observation. He screamed when they put him in the truck, screamed that they were taking him to feed it. I never saw him again. That night, I drove into town. I tried to drink away the images, but they stayed. Faces in the beer glass. Screams behind every clink of the jukebox. On my way back to the cabin, I saw something standing in the road. I hit the brakes hard. At first I thought it was a moose, but it was taller, standing upright. Its face was a pale oval, featureless, and then it turned and walked into the woods. Like it wanted me to follow. I did not. It came to my window later. It did not tap or scratch. It just stood there, watching, motionless, a statue of something that should not exist. I turned off the lights and crouched beneath the windowsill with the rifle in my hands. My heart raced. I could not make a sound. If I did, it might know exactly where I was. I stayed like that for an hour, maybe longer. When I finally dared to look again, it was gone. But there were footprints in the snow, 3-toed deep, leading from the edge of the woods to my front door, then back again. No detours, no hesitation. The next morning, I found a dead raven nailed to my porch. Its wings were gone, its eyes replaced with tiny polished stones. I buried it and stayed inside the rest of the day. At night, the voices came again, not over the radio, from the trees, chanting, in no language I recognized. The air vibrated with them. My bones ached with them. Then something knocked on the door. Once, twice, then silence. I did not move. When the knock came again, it was louder. The door rattled in its frame. I shouted into the dark that I was armed. I aimed my rifle through the curtains. Nothing there. Then the voice came again. This time not from the trees, from inside the house. Behind me, I spun around and fired. The shot tore a hole through the pantry door. Cans spilled across the floor. Nothing was there, but the air was colder now, heavy, like I had sunk underwater. I heard the floor creak upstairs, slow, measured, 1 step at a time. I crept toward the stairs with the rifle tight against my shoulder. Every part of me screamed to run, but I forced myself up. The hallway at the top was empty. The bedroom doors were all open. I checked them one by one. Nothing. No one. But when I turned to go back down the stairs, I saw the bathroom door was now closed. I had left it open. I pressed my hand to the doorknob. It was warm, too warm. I threw the door open and aimed inside. The mirror was shattered. The glass pieces had been arranged on the floor into a perfect spiral. At the center was one of my photographs, a picture of me taken from the woods. I had never taken it. The walls were covered in scratches, symbols, eyes, spirals, words written backward and upside down. One word repeated over and over, hollow. I backed out and slammed the door. I locked it and pushed a dresser in front of it for good measure. I did not sleep. In the morning I found all the doors wide open. Front, back, pantry, bathroom, every drawer in the kitchen had been pulled out and stacked in the shape of a person on the floor. Arms, legs, a head made of a cracked bowl filled with teeth. I packed my bag. I was done. I loaded the truck and drove. I did not stop until I was 30 miles from Coldwater, but every turn of the road felt wrong, off. Somehow I ended up back at the cabin. The sun never moved. The sky never changed. I was stuck. I turned off the engine and sat in silence. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I tried the radio. Static. I tried my phone. No signal. I opened the door and stepped outside. The air was still, not quiet. Still, as if the wind had been vacuumed out of the valley. I walked back to the cabin, every footstep crunching too loud. I kept the rifle pointed low, but ready. When I opened the door, it looked the same. The same bowl of teeth. The same wide open windows. But something else was there now. The smell, rotting meat, wet fur, burned wood. All at once, I gagged and covered my mouth. I ran through the house opening windows, trying to breathe. In the bedroom I found a new photo on the bed. My truck parked outside, me standing beside it. Taken seconds ago. I turned in a full circle. No one in sight. I grabbed the photo and burned it in the sink. The smoke curled into letters as it rose. I could not read the language, but my name was hidden in it. I was sure. That night I did not sleep. I sat with the rifle in my lap, watching the hallway. Just before dawn I saw movement. A pale face peeking from around the corner. It did not blink. It did not breathe. When I raised the rifle, it vanished. I walked to the spot. Nothing. But the wall was damp, slimy, like it had been licked. I needed to get out. I packed again. I drove faster. I took side roads, dirt paths. I followed a deer trail for miles. Every time I came around a bend, the cabin was there again, waiting, like it had moved to meet me. I stopped the truck and screamed until my voice broke. I tore the map into pieces. I threw the GPS into the woods. The trees the cabin no longer creaked. It breathed. Walls pulsed with a rhythm not my own, like lungs beneath wooden skin. I barricaded myself in the back room. Not because it was safe nothing was, but because it was the last door that hadn't opened by itself. Outside, the snow fell in reverse. I stared out through the window, watching flakes rise into the sky, like ash drawn back into a fire. The trees swayed in unison, bending toward the cabin like they were listening, or waiting. At midnight, the whispering started again, not outside, but under the bed. I didn't look. I couldn't. I shoved a chair against the frame, loaded my rifle, and sat in the corner until the whispers turned to scratching, then silence. When dawn came, I found a trail of bloody handprints leading from the bedroom to the front door. Small ones, child-sized, but they weren't prints. They were impressions, as if whatever made them had pressed from the inside of the wood. I opened the front door. The forest was gone. In its place stood a field of mirrors, hundreds of them, all angled toward the sky. Each reflected a different version of the same thing. The cabin, me, and something standing behind me. Tall, hollow-eyed, smiling without a mouth. I turned around. Nothing there. I smashed the nearest mirror. Blood splashed out instead of glass shards. My hands burned. When I looked down, words had etched themselves into my palms. Stay. By nightfall, the cabin had changed again. The furniture melted into the floorboards. The walls stretched outward like skin pulled across bone. Something knocked from the inside of the fireplace. I did not answer. Instead, I carved a message into the wall with a kitchen knife. My last attempt to anchor myself to something real. I am real. My name is. But before I could finish, the letters rearranged themselves. I was real. Your name was. And beneath it, a single line appeared in dripping black. It comes when you forget. The altar cracked again. Hairline fractures split across its surface, and the skulls began to slide apart like a puzzle coming undone. Beneath them, something glistened. Not flesh, not bone. Something in between, wet, twitching, alive. The thing behind the altar stepped back, as if reverent, as if afraid. What came out was not a creature. Not entirely. It was a shape liquid and shifting, like oil trying to remember how to be a body. It rose from the altar, dragging with it strands of sinew and veins that snapped and hissed like wires under tension. It had no face, only a mouth, enormous, gaping, filled with teeth that weren't sharp but wide, crushing teeth, grinding teeth. It screamed. The sound turned the chamber inside out. My ears bled. My vision split in two. The scream bent the light. It folded the air. And then, suddenly, silence. Deafening. Absolute. I couldn't even hear my own heartbeat. The creature turned toward me. I tried to step back. My body disobeyed. The tunnel behind me had vanished. There was only this place. This moment. The thing reached out, not with hands, but with a tendril of shadow that coiled through the air like smoke underwater. It touched my chest. I felt my memories unravel. My mother's face. My childhood dog. The first time I saw snow. All of it turned to static. I screamed again. Not from pain, but from loss. Then it stopped. The tendril recoiled. The thing tilted, as if confused. It spoke again, this time in a voice made of every voice I had ever heard. My own, Ray Whitaker's, Michael Adams, my father, my sister. The thing said, "You are not whole." It stepped away. The chamber trembled. The black water rippled. The walls of the place shuddered like lungs trying to exhale. And then I was falling, not through space, through self, through who I was. Through every lie I had ever told to survive. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the cabin. The fire had gone out. My skin was covered in frost. The rifle lay beside me, rusted and useless. There were no windows anymore, only walls covered in symbols. The doors were gone, just blank wood, but I was not alone. Something stood in the corner. It wore my face, my clothes. It smiled with teeth that were too wide. It raised a hand and pointed at me. Then it said, "Your turn." I did not move, could not. My body had forgotten how to obey. My doppelganger stepped forward, its smile never fading, as if etched into its skin. It did not blink. I could not tell if it needed to. The air between us warped, pulsing like heat rising from asphalt. It spoke again, this time in a whisper that echoed inside my skull. "Let me in." My hands rose without command. My throat burned. I tried to scream, but the sound twisted in my mouth and came out as laughter. It's laughter. I collapsed. My knees hit the wooden floor, but the pain felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. Behind me, the wall cracked. Not a break, a seam. From floor to ceiling, it split open slowly, revealing a black corridor that pulsed with red light. I turned back to the thing wearing my face. It nodded once. I crawled. The hallway writhed, wet, breathing. The light dimmed as I moved forward, until I could see only the pulsing veins beneath the walls. They seemed to follow me, as though guiding me or watching. Time broke down. I felt hunger, thirst, then nothing. My body faded until I was only motion, memory, regret, then a voice, one I had not heard in years. My sister, she was singing a lullaby our mother used to hum when the storms came. I followed it, desperate, starving for anything familiar. The corridor widened. Ahead, a figure stood in the dark, small, childlike. She turned, but it was not her. It was what was left of her. Skin like paper, eyes gone, teeth worn to nubs. Her mouth opened and the song spilled out, unchanged, beautiful. I wept. She reached toward me, but instead of a hand, There was a mirror. It showed me not as I was, but as I could become. Hollow, grinning, wearing someone else's face. I turned away, but the reflection did not. It stepped out of the mirror, stepped into me, and I finally remembered what I had forgotten. I had never left the altar. I had never left the pit. I was not the last. I was the beginning now. I understand. The others were never victims. They were vessels. The pit does not consume. It converts. It rebuilds the broken and gives them purpose. That purpose is not salvation. It is spread. The cabin no longer holds form. The walls bend inward. The floor pulses beneath my feet. I no longer feel cold or heat. I only feel the pull toward something older than God, hungrier than death. I walk through the new door, not out, but down. Below the cabin is a stairwell, concrete, endless. It smells like copper and mold. I do not need light. My eyes have changed. My vision is no longer limited by shape or shadow. I see the intention of things. There are others below, kneeling, waiting. They hum in silence, skin flayed, eyes peeled open. They are listening for the signal. I am the signal now. A shape waits at the bottom, tall, impossibly thin. It drips black. From its limbs, I recognize it. It was the one behind the altar, but it is smaller now, lesser. It bows as I pass. I step into the black water. It does not resist. It accepts. Around me the liquid hardens into structure, walls, teeth, doors, that breathe. The pit is not just a place. It is a body, a mind, a machine made of memory and hunger. I press my palm against a slab of bone. The world above listens. I speak without speaking. My message is not in words. It is in dreams, in static, in the silent corners of every eye that has ever looked into the dark and thought something might be looking back. They will hear it. They already have. You did. You think this was a story? It never was. It was a door.